We are building a house on our land here in Texas. I've got cows and my wife doesn't want them on the front porch for some reason. So I'm building a fence for our yard. And if you have a Texas farmhouse, you might as well have a Texas style fence, which around here means drill stem. There are lots of oil wells about 100 or 200 miles west of here, so the pipe is pretty much everywhere. In an oil well, they screw this pipe together and it goes down the hole for numerous applications. Once the pipe no longer meets the specs for going down the hole, they sell it as repurposed material. I cut the pipe up into 10-foot sections, and then I hired these guys to set the posts. He charged me $10 a post to put these in. If I set these myself, I'd already have $8 in each hole with concrete. So when you consider all the labor it would take for me to set these posts, this is a really good deal. I own a skid steer myself, and I guess I could put these in if I bought this attachment, but he has a much bigger machine, and I really couldn't justify buying this attachment to use 1 or 2 times a year. These two guys are definitely good at their job. I think it's pretty amazing how straight they can put them in with this machine. You can't see it in the video, but they've got a string stretched between the 2 corner posts to set all the rest of the posts by. After the posts are all set, I used a laser level to mark the tops of each post, and then now I'm cutting a saddle on the top of each post. This saddle, or also called a cope, is where I will later weld the top rail. I used a jig that you wrap around the post to mark the saddle. You'll see that later in the video. I found out that it's easier to cut the saddle straight through and then come back and contour it to the shape of a pipe. I used to have this amazing welding clamp that you could clamp onto a piece of pipe like a C-clamp, but for some reason I sold it on eBay and I'm kicking myself ever since. A 2-pound hammer makes quick work of any slag. And finally a test fit to make sure that everything's done right. Here's a post that the guys put in a little bit crooked. The guys offered to fix anything that was a problem, but I told them as long as they were plumb in the direction perpendicular to the fence, that I'd fix it the other direction. So here I'm using a come along to get the post perfectly plumb. Once you get the post level, where the upper rail will join, you can then measure it out and cut your length of the upper rail. At least once I cut the upper rail before I made the post plumb, which meant that my upper rail didn't join directly in the center of the post. I'm grinding the end off flat so that I can get a decent weld between the upper rails. If you're enjoying this video, please hit that subscribe button. This is 2 7/8 inch pipe. It's about on the extreme limit of what you could do by hand without a machine. But you could do the smaller drill stem size 2 3/8 without a machine. Probably somebody's dying to comment, hey, it should be measured on the ID, so it's 2.5 inch pipe. But everybody I know calls it 2 7/8, even though technically it should be 2.5. Because pipe should be measured on the interior diameter, and tubing would be measured on the outer diameter. This is just a pipe fence. It's no natural gas pipeline, so no reason to do any kind of fillet welds or anything. Just weld it up. I'm using an 1/8 inch diameter 70-18 rod to weld up this pipe. Drill stem is an alloy, it's not really mild steel, but 70-18 seems to do okay for welding it up. This fence took me about 5 weeks to build. I worked on it off and on when I had time. It's late fall, but you can tell we haven't had our first freeze because the grass is still green. a wire wheel is much faster than using a chip and hammer. I bought this cordless DeWalt grinder just before starting this project, and while it's a nice tool, one of those things you wonder why you waited so long to get it. I've got all the top rails welded up, and here I'm going to show how I started welding the intermediate rails. I measured one section at a time, and then I went to my shop and cut up the pipe. Up in the top left, you can see where I'm building the fence. This is my Hypertherm 30XP plasma cutter. It's been a really good machine. Here are the drops from the fence sections I've already done. This is the marking guide I use to cut out pipe saddles. I mentioned it earlier. It just wraps around and you mark off with a grease pencil where you want to cut. And I'm grinding a spot for the plasma cutter ground clamp. Hypertherm plasma cutters have what's called a drag tip, where you can drag the tip along the metal while you're cutting. But I found out with something rusty like this, it's better to just hover above it and not drag the tip around, or else you'll get a jagged cut. Just like the fence post tops, I'm cutting the contour of the saddle to match the shape of a cylinder. It was much more efficient to spend extra time with prep, which meant less time welding up big gaps. Close enough for my fence. Because I'm strange, I guess, I kind of timed each section that I cut out. My best time was 45 minutes to cope and cut 3 pipes. Now I'm going to attach the intermediate pipes. I'm using a clamp to hold at one end. A wood block is a spacer, and then another clamp to hold up the other end. This video was shot after the first freeze. You can tell that the grass has gone dormant. It's also a little more flammable. Now I'm making the spacing on the other side perfect, and I'm going to tack it up as well. On one section, I had the dumb idea to weld up one side completely and then tack the other side. A 7018 rod will punch right through this rust, but if you got a wire wheel, you might as well use it. I had to make a second pass every time the tip of the cope met the pipe fence, as you see here. After doing this a while, I figured out it's much easier to make the pipes a little bit long and kind of force them into place than having them be too short and have the trouble of welding up big gaps. A good come along makes easy work of putting this pipe into place. And I'm setting the spacing for both sides so I don't weld it up crooked. This bottom rail might look funny being so low, but the whole fence is perfectly level instead of following the contour of the land. So in one section, it does become about a foot off the ground. Here's the finished fence and some snow, which is a big deal around here because it snows like every 4 years.
Please subscribe. Hope you enjoyed the video on how to make a pipe fence. Hope you have a great 2021. Take care, God bless. Remember, Texas got snow, so who knows what's next. Bye.